And really, this is an opportunity for Stephen from Verizon to be able to share some tricks of the trade as it goes with talking with recruiters in the space, networking via LinkedIn and other things. These are similar themes, but Stephen also works for Verizon and constantly is posting specific openings related to this community and this population. Not just military, though. Obviously, he specializes in military, but Verizon is a great partner and is looking for cyber roles in general. But hopefully, whether you're military or not, you can gain some info here. Stephen, you can keep this as casual as you want. You're welcome to share your screen if you want to present, if you just want to talk through. And Stephen, as he has been in the past, he's usually open to adding on LinkedIn. And also, if you have questions for him that we cannot answer, I'm just really happy you're here, Stephen. You did a great job presenting. You were so engaging with our students. I know we got great feedback from you. We're so excited to have you back.
Cool. Thanks for including me once again. I like doing these. This is where the rubber hits the road. Hey, Terrence, look, there's Terrence. Yeah, what's up, Terrence Brooks?
Terrence comes to everything.
So
Love it.
if we could unlock my ability to share screen, I have some slides.
You are co-host, so you should be good. I just did it.
All right. Boom, boom. There we go.
And I see Lee again. Hey again, Lee.
All right. Just let me know that you can see
Steve,
that, Steve. Are we good to go?
Yes, sir. See you and hear. Great.
All right. Tracking. So my name is Stephen Weston, as Steve, the other Steve, alluded to. Love this program. I love what it's about. And thanks, Steve, for keeping up with this program and helping out these folks. This is amazing. But getting right into it, we're going to talk about understanding recruiters and resumes, because these are two critical parts of the job search process. You cannot get a job without going through a recruiter, and you cannot get through a recruiter without having a good resume. So they go hand in hand. There's some other things, obviously, in the process, but these are usually two of the big items, the big ticket items that transitioning service members kind of have a little bit of trouble or even struggle a little bit with. So we're gonna go over it today. So just a little introduction on the rest of my family here at Verizon, the V team. Obviously, that's me in the bottom right-hand corner, the bald, wonderful, handsome-looking guy with the goatee there. But these are the other members of my team. And so we got Michael McCoy, who leads our team. He is the head of all military talent programs at Verizon, and just recently, as of yesterday, testified in front of Congress on ways that Congress can help us create more opportunities for veteran employment. So he is a champion in this space. Below him is Brittany Becker. Brittany is one of the recruiters on our team, and she specializes in global networks and technology, which is very relevant to the people that are in the CWCT program, as she's probably the one recruiter on the team other than me that you would be primarily working with should you apply to any cybersecurity, field tech roles, field operations manager roles, network engineer, SOC, if you're going to be working in a SCIF, anything like that. Cedric Harris beneath her deals more with finance, supply chain, project management, and he dives into some other roles that are in the corporate space. And Paola Martinez is our program lead. And so she's Michael's right hand, and she does a lot of the behind the scenes work, getting us involved with different organizations, the logistics, getting us scheduled for our different career fairs that we attend and other recruiting events that revolve around military recruiting. So you can also, if you want to, before, during, after this presentation, you can go on www.verizon.com/military careers, and you can kind of play around with that page. It's dedicated to military talent as well as military spouses. And so you can go through there and access some wonderful things like our military skills matching tool. You can see our calendar of events for upcoming info sessions, and you can also get yourself on our talent network. So without further ado, let's go over the agenda. So what we're going to learn today. So today we're going to talk about resumes. We're going to talk about recruiters, but more importantly, what are the different types of recruiters? Once you get a hold of a recruiter, how are you going to work with them? How are you going to communicate with them? And as you move along through the process, what's the interview process look like? And then we'll also talk a little bit about applicant tracking systems, And Steve, if we have time at the end, if they want to pick my brain about LinkedIn, we can do that too if we
Great.
got the time.
Awesome.
So let's talk about resume prep. And that's a beautiful aircraft right there for all my Air Force folks out there. I used to be an air transportation craftsman before I became an Air Force recruiter. And I used to spend my free time, actually it was a mandatory time loading these things into these aircraft. So CH-47s and the UH-60s and you name it. I put it on a C-5 or a C-17. But let's look at this resume. So this is Captain America. He's applying for a job. And we're gonna use this as an example of what a very well thought out and put together resume looks like. And we're gonna talk about why that is. And so just, as we're looking at this, you can kind of see the whole resume in one shot. We're gonna zoom in a little bit on some of these pieces and talk about them more intimately. But this is a very well put together resume. I actually had to go in here and clean it up a little bit because it was one of our applicants' resumes who actually got hired into the company because of this resume. He didn't get hired necessarily because of the resume, but he got the attention that he needed from the recruiter in order to verbalize his value, which got him hired. And that is the purpose of a resume, is to be able to showcase your value to a recruiter who is seeking talent for a position in their organization. If you ask 100 different people about resumes, how long should they be? How should they be formatted? You'll probably get 100 different answers. But me personally, as somebody who kind of lives in the military recruiting space, 1 to 3 pages is fine. I would say it depends on how many years experience you have and how many years of that experience are relevant to the position. So for example, I spent 13 years as an Air Force recruiter. I retired as an Air Force recruiting flight chief. So I had 13 years of relevant recruiting experience and assignment when I was applying to be a recruiter with Verizon. And so my resume was 2 pages and it went back about 12 years. Now, I didn't have any of my air transportation stuff on my resume because it wasn't relevant to the position I was applying for. And so we want to be careful when we're doing this, that is the content on our resume relevant to what you're applying for. And we'll take a further dive into that here in a little bit. If you're working with federal resumes, which is a completely different animal, they could be any 3 to 5, 7 pages. I've seen 10-page federal resumes. But once again, following the federal resume format, you're going to want to showcase all of your relevant skills, experiences, certifications, education, and whatnot. But as you can see with this right here, this particular applicant did a very good job of quickly summarizing who they are and what they're about. This is what I would call a very well put together tech resume. There are different types of resumes depending on what you're going for, but this is CWCT is about tech for the most part. So this is a tech resume. And as you can see, he very quickly summarized who he is and what he's about. But just beneath that, he listed out all of his skills, tools, and computer languages, program languages that he knows. With tech resumes, this is great because when recruiters are looking through hundreds of resumes, they are very quickly able to establish, does this person have the program certs, languages, data querying tools, data analytics tools that I'm looking for? And so as you can see here, I zoomed it in a little bit more. This person right here was looking for a cybersecurity role. And so they were highlighting SIEM platforms, incident response. So if you're trying to do red team, blue team investigations, you're trying to work in the SOC or the NOC, they're going to want somebody that has investigations experience, incident response experience, and platforms. They're going to be looking for specific languages. So for Verizon, we're very heavy on Python. And so as you can see under languages, he made sure he has Python there, Bash, PowerShell, and some others there. When you're reading through the job description is going to tell you what the recruiter is looking for. So if you have those hard skills, soft skills, tools, and languages, this is where you want to put them front and center on your resume. They don't need to know where you currently live. So for example, Captain America put that he's at Fort Hood, Texas. I would shy away from putting your location on your resume because in the military community, we often move, especially military spouses. And so a non-veteran recruiter may see Fort Hood, Texas, and you're applying to a role in Ashburn, Virginia, and they're going to go, oh, there's no way this person's going to move to Ashburn, Virginia. They're in Texas, and they'll skip right by you, which is, they shouldn't be doing that, but it happens. So if you take that off, they don't need to know where you're at. We can get to that much later. For our fellowship positions at Verizon that we advertise, we understand that military members move after they get out. We're often, stationed overseas or somewhere else in the CONUS that wasn't of our choosing. And so we know these folks are oftentimes willing to move and relocate. So we understand that. Non-veteran recruiters, not so much. Military spouses often struggle sometimes because civilian recruiters do not understand that they move every few years, every 2 years, depending on whether they're enlisted, an officer, homestead, or what the situation is. So what I would say is if you're a military spouse, I would put military spouse probably somewhere in your summary. That lets us know as military recruiters who you are, and we know what we need to look for and how we need to verbalize your value when we advocate on your behalf. What I would try to avoid though is like 2-column resumes. You'll see the one where it's like the right side is your experiences and skills and the left side is God knows what. I've seen all kinds of random stuff on the left side. What I would say is you want to make sure you use your real estate on that page well. The better you use the real estate on your resume, the more effective it's going to be. That doesn't mean it's a perfect science. It doesn't mean that 2-column resumes cannot be successful. But what I have found is that the 2-column resumes tend to not get as much attention in the process as ones that are not 2-column. For example, you also might want to avoid putting your photo on there. You want to not, if you don't have a relevant experience, beyond 10, 12 years, I'd probably leave it off. And the reason for that is you want to make sure you're not inadvertently opening yourself up to biases or what would you call it, discrimination, like age discrimination. You don't want to have your photo on there for things like that. I know when I was going through TAP, when I was going through Hiring Our Heroes, these were things that they advised to not have on the resume. So keep your location off, photos off, and you usually only want to go back about 10 to 12 years in your experience so that you can avoid those 3 different types of potential biases when folks are looking at your resume. Here we're looking at the bottom half of the resume, and so let's talk about experience. So, I keep saying relevant. What is relevant, right? So when you're looking at the job description, it's going to tell you what are the relevant skills that the recruiter or organization are recruiting for, whether it's Verizon or anybody else. And so what you're going to want to do is read the job description in its entirety. It's going to dictate how many years you need to go back. For example, if it's only asking for 3 to 5 years experience hands-on, and you have 10 years experience hands-on, are all 10 years relevant to that position? If they are, put them on there. If they're not, and you at least have 4 to 5 years or 3 to 5 years relevant experience, you at a minimum need to go back that far. Okay, so it kind of helps you, when you're starting your resume, how do I know how far to go back? Well, at a minimum, you're going to want to go back as far as what they're asking for. And then if you have additional relevant experience and, on top of that, then you could go back a little bit further. But most salary pay ranges cap at 12 years. So if you're putting 15, 16, 20 years on your resume, you're not going to get any additional compensation in the compensation process for anything past 12 years. The compensation pay ranges cap at like 10 to 12 years, so depending on what the position is. So you don't really, that's why you really don't need to go anything further past that. Let's see here, knowing your audience or your industry. This is also critical. A lot of people ask me about cover letters. I don't really read cover letters. It's not something that I feel I need. If the resume is put together well, I don't really need to read the cover letter, because the cover letter usually just says the exact same thing that the resume says. It's just twice as much reading for me to do as a resume. And when I'm looking at hundreds of resumes, if everybody has a cover letter, now for every resume I'm reading a cover letter, now it's like I'm reading 200 resumes. So that doesn't say they're not useful, but you just want to make sure you know your audience. Steve, you had a question?
No, I just kind of wanted to sidebar here, Stephen, and you may talk about this, but if you don't mind elaborating a little, this is a really great example on this page of civilian-friendly language.
Yes.
And I don't know if you just want to elaborate on that, but I get this question a lot because this reads very well, where you're just very, very specifically translating what you did in the military versus what that means in the civilian sector. So I don't know if you
Great
want to touch
question,
on
Steve. Yeah, absolutely. If it's later in the slides, I'll just skip past it. So we'll talk about it right now. So what he's talking about is, this is actually like a retiring lieutenant colonel. And so when I was talking to him before he applied to the role, he had a bunch of military jargon in here. So what's a JCON? What's a JPON? What's a MILCON? What's CENTCOM? What are all, we're so used to all these military acronyms, ranks, military speak. Civilian recruiters are not going to understand what those things are or the scope. For example, let's take CENTCOM. What is CENTCOM? You and I may know what CENTCOM is, Central Command, and there's a general that sits on top of there, or if it's, the Navy equivalent or Marine Corps equivalent, it might be a naval officer that sits in there. But at the end of the day, the civilian isn't going to understand what that scope of responsibility is. What does that mean when you led a CENTCOM mission? Or what does that mean when you were a commander of CENTCOM? Or what does that mean when you were this, that, and, whether you were a first sergeant, a tech sergeant, it doesn't matter where in the rank spectrum you are, they're not going to understand what a senior NCO is. They're not going to understand what an NCO is. They're not going to know what a CGO is. So we need to put it in the terms that the civilian recruiter is going to understand and be able to relate to. And so what Steve is talking about is, like, on this specifically, getting all that military jargon out of these bullets and looking up your industry to find out what are the civilian equivalents to what I do in the military. So if you're a cyber guy, let's say you're at MARSOC and you're doing red team, blue team, and you're gonna have all the acronyms that you use on your team, your company, your battalion, your squadron, whatever service you're in. What are the civilian terms for that? That's what it means to really research your industry, so that you can correlate your experiences and then utilize the civilian terms to explain what your scope of responsibilities were. So for one really good example is, as an Air Force recruiter and a senior MEPS liaison at Fort Hamilton, I was responsible for like US MERS, AFRIS, ARIS, which are applicant tracking systems, and HRIS systems for the military. But that's what we use in the military. When I was applying to roles at Verizon, they don't use those systems. They use Workday, PeopleSoft. There's others out there. But so when I was putting my resume together to apply for Verizon, I had to find out what are the HRIS systems, or what is even an HRIS, because we don't even use that term in the military. And instead of saying, hey, I used ARIS, AFRIS, and MERS, I converted it to say utilize applicant tracking systems, parentheses, ATS. I have, history doing applicant tracking. What is it called? Like beginning to end of the process and recruiting. Full life cycle. So full life cycle recruiting. We don't call it full life cycle recruiting in military recruiting. So, just looking at the industry's terms and putting them to practice. And so for these, for this one in particular, he did a really good job of really, and a lot of this too is because he scheduled coffee chats with people that already work at the company and asked them very pertinent information as well. Hey, I did this in the military. what do you guys do in your company that's very similar to that? And then they would explain it to him. And then he was able to go back and update his resume, you know. So those are just really simple examples. So where are we going to find some of those keywords in terms that Steve is talking about? So the job description is where you can actually pull a lot of them without having to have a coffee chat or even talk to somebody externally. The job description is going to tell you all the keywords that they're looking for. And so when this is a Verizon job description, but you can see in the what you'll be doing section that, where it says this opportunity is for military personnel who are current participants of the Hiring Our Heroes cohort. Everything below that in the what you'll be doing section is what the hiring manager is looking for. That is the actual day-to-day, week-to-week, and month-to-month tasks that are going to be directly relevant to this position. And so you're going to see them bulleted out right there: assisting with monthly close process and projects, performing analytical assignments, and preparing accounting reports. These bulletized items are the keywords and terms you need to be speaking to in your bullets on your resume. If your resume bullets that are here under your individual different assignments are not speaking to the bulletized items that are in this section, you are not tailoring your resume and your skills and experiences to what this hiring manager is looking for. These are the first things that a civilian recruiter is going to look for in your resume when they open it up. If they open up your resume and they're reading through it and they don't see any of these bulletized items, they're going to think that you don't have any relevant experience to the position, and they're going to move on to the next person. Steve, is that what you were kind of looking for?
That is perfect, even more than. So
okay.
Thank you, Stephen. That's just a question we get a lot. I think it's a really important one because I see it on resumes. They're super qualified. I pretend I was Army. I don't even understand half of this stuff, especially Bird Colonel. I can't read what they did. So I think this is critical. So thank you, Stephen.
Absolutely. So we also need to meet the basic qualifications and the preferred qualifications, which are a little bit further down on this job description, and that's under the what we're looking for section. And so under the what we're looking for section, you're going to see a need to have and an even better part. And so the need to haves are not negotiable. You either have them or you don't. Do not apply for this role if you are missing one of the need to haves. You will just be rejected. Oftentimes I'll have folks apply to roles. I go to look at their resume and it'll ask for like 5 years relevant experience, and they have 2 and they'll apply anyway. Well, I was hoping that, they would. No. With most of these Fortune 50 companies, if it says they need 5 years relevant experience, it's 5 years relevant experience. I don't care. There is no hope for that. You need to meet the basic qualifications. The reason for that is for compliance, for hiring laws for different states. For Verizon, for example, we're a federal contractor, so we have to follow very specific hiring practices because we can be audited by the federal government. We can't hire people into roles that don't have the basic qualifications that are outlined in the job description. So they hold us and they audit us based off of these. So when you're looking at these need to have, they either call it need to have or basic qualifications. You need to make sure you're meeting those at a minimum to apply for the job. Now, the even better section, or in most job descriptions, they call it preferred qualifications. This is where you set yourself apart from the competition. The same thing with the what you'll be doing section. This is where you set yourself apart. A lot of folks, I don't know, for some reason, they're just not in the mindset. But when I was in high school, I was an athlete. I was a cross-country runner. And I know a lot of folks that joined the military, they were even played football, soccer, track and field, basketball, whatever. This is a competition, man. This is competition. There are 200, 300, 400 other people applying to this job. How are you setting yourself apart from everybody else? And why should they hire you over Kerry Willis or Steve Olson or Steve Weston? Why should they hire you, right? And so the even better section, if you meet everything in the basic qualifications, this even better section, if you want to give yourself an honest look in the mirror, am I competitive? Do I only have one of these 6 things listed, or do I have all 6 of them? Do I have all 6 of the preferred quals and most of the things up there in that what you'll be doing section? Do I have experience doing a good bit of those? Yes. Oh, okay. I'm probably going to be super competitive. I should probably apply. If you're looking at that and you meet the basic qualifications and like one thing in the preferred quals and one thing up in the what you'll be doing section, you can still apply. Chances are, though, you're not going to be very competitive, and you're probably not going to hear anything from the recruiter. And 30 days are going to go by, and you're going to go, these recruiters never call me. Nobody's calling me. Nobody's hiring. Is it really because nobody's hiring, or because you're applying to roles you had no business applying to in the first place because you're not really competitive? You know, I know that's kind of a rough way to say it, but, you know, honesty is always my best policy. You know, so, you know, you want to make sure that the roles that you're looking at and the job descriptions that you're looking at legitimately, are you a competitive fit? And where my team comes into play and what I do is, if you are a competitive fit, now you can reach out to me and I will reach out to that civilian recruiter and advocate on your behalf to get you a telephone screen with that recruiter. And that's the difference of my team versus a lot of other teams, is we are there to help bridge that gap for direct hire veterans. For Skill Bridge and Fellowship, we are the recruiters for the Skill Bridge and Fellowship roles. So we do the screens, we do the interviews, we work with the hiring managers for those. This is another visual example for those that are following me on LinkedIn. I have this as one of my featured posts as well. And so when, you know, if you ever forget any of this and you need like a quick refresh, you can go on to my LinkedIn page and find this same exact article. And you can read it, and the visualization pictures are there. And this really shows you the process of pulling the keywords and terms from the job description and plugging it into your resume and where to plug it. Steve, I saw you had your hand up. Did I just answer your question?
No, I actually, you mentioned I just want to make sure if later you were going to talk about the difference between direct hire roles and the skill bridge.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Yep.
No, that's all I was going to pin there.
Yep. No worries. Well, it's not really, I can say it now and then go back over it again later. So Skill Bridge and Hiring Our Heroes are the internships that you can obtain in your final 180 days of active duty. So if you're getting ready to retire or separate and you're 180 days out, this is a program that you can apply to through your chain of command or CSP. And you apply to these very specifically advertised Skill Bridge or Fellowship roles. And we bring you on as an unpaid intern because the DoD still pays you your active duty paycheck while you work with us to gain some relevant experience. And with Verizon Skill Bridge and Fellowship roles, all of our Skill Bridge and Fellowship roles are tied to headcount, which means there's a full-time position attached to them at the end. And so that's actually how I came on board Verizon. As I went through Hiring Our Heroes, I did a 3-month internship with Verizon as a recruiter. And then I was pulled forward full-time at the back end and became a full-time recruiter with the company. Direct hire is you're already out, you've been out, or you're a military spouse, you've been out 10, 15, 20 years, but you're a veteran. You're going to apply and compete with all talent, whether it's internal talent or external talent. Skill Bridge and Hiring Our Heroes fellows only compete with transitioning talent, only. So that's kind of the difference between the two. Another, if you could see it on the right hand of the screen, there is a automated program out there that can help you with, hey, am I hitting all the keywords and terms I need to hit? Jobscan.co is one. You can also Google Skill Syncer is another program that you can use, where you upload both the job description and your resume, and it will scan them to see how accurately you're hitting on the keywords and terms of a job description. And these are just some more examples of, this is from that person that was on that resume previously. This is, how they were hitting in the what you'll be doing section. This section right here, these bulleted items, This is how this service member was making sure that their skills in the military were relevant to what was being asked in that section. And so one of the things here was delivering big ideas as well as transform them into scalable programs. And so this individual said, my work was highlighted by US Cybercom. This organization is the headquarters for all of United States cyber defense. In parentheses, his knowledge of systemic integration led to US Cybercom employing his model of how to utilize developmental cyber capabilities and accomplishments far exceed the normal tasking and scope of a combat support team and represent the foremost advances in cyber operations. That is a very scalable and relevant accomplishment to highlight his ability to accomplish this thing. And that's just one example, of being able to really showcase, effectively your value to a recruiter or a hiring manager for those things that are bulleted out there. And so these were all bullets on that individual's resume. And we could read through some of these, but these are just some examples. If you guys want to screenshot this, I'll wait a couple seconds if you want to screenshot it real quick. Good to go. Moving along. And this just elaborates even, some more examples, how to match up the need to have an even better section. And so when we're going through here, 6 or more years of relevant experience, you can see on the right-hand side, he has 18 plus years of experience with internal and external cross-functioning teams and 13 years with direct input with senior leaders on a daily basis. And so with these statements on the right, he has answered everything in the need to have section, and he is also elaborating on what he has that's relevant to the even better preferred qualification section. If you want to screenshot this, feel free to do so. These are great examples. It took me a minute to put these together, but this is a really good example of how to really elaborate on your value. Moving along. All right, now we're going to talk about the different types of recruiters. So when going through recruiters, there's 2 different types. There's recruiters like me, and then there's third-party recruiters. And so I am what's called an in-house recruiter. I recruit specifically for one company. I only recruit for this company, and I generally recruit very specific to a very specific group of internal clients. And so for me, that specific group is y'all, the military family, right? But other recruiters they only do field ops, or they only do finance, or they only do network operations or construction or engineers. They're very specialized, and they only recruit for the hiring leaders in that part of the organization. They're more likely to be with you throughout the entire full life cycle process. So from the time you apply to the time that you actually physically onboard, and probably a few weeks after that, they're going to see you through the entire process. All right. And depending on the company size, they might actually do a little bit more. Like in my company, compensation is a completely separate department, but in other smaller companies, the recruiter might actually be the person that handles that as well. In a third-party recruiting firm, now they're a separate company whose job is to seek out companies that need help finding talent. So let's say Verizon, for example, needs a public affairs officer, or somebody at like that CGO level to engage with our crisis response team. And we're not really getting the talent organically in our advertised positions that we should be getting. We will reach out to a separate company, like a Fusion Cell or something like that, and they have their own recruiters, and their recruiters may have specialties, but typically they'll recruit for everything and anything. And their job is to go out and find talent and bring that talent to the company that they're sourcing for. And then what will usually happen is they charge a fee for that. So if the host company is paying $60 an hour for the role, they may take a 20% cut or a 10% cut of that. And so you as the employee, you might get $50 an hour or $40 an hour while you're working for that contract, but they'll get the other $10 or $20, every month as you're getting paid, they get paid. And so what you'll see is third-party recruiting firms, they tend to live in the contracting space a lot more. So 3 months, 6 months, 12-month contracts. They will occasionally, jump into the full life cycle, like the full-time salary positions, and they'll handle that 20%, 10% cut of the base salary a little differently. But they will usually, what they recruit depends on the flavor of the month, what company is hiring them at that given time. And so what you'll find is that, like I said here, they'll parachute in like out of nowhere. Like, they'll hunt for that specific role, they'll get it, and then they'll move on to the next role. And they typically won't be with you throughout the entire process, even onboarding. They'll usually, like, once they get you and they get you to the hiring manager and the hiring manager selects you, usually then they're moving along and going to the next role that they're recruiting for. You can usually identify these on LinkedIn, for example, by number one, who they work for. Is it a mainstream Fortune 50, Fortune 500 company, or is the company, I use Fusion Cell because my buddy Monty, he leads that recruiting team. We're all former Air Force recruiters. But that's what he does, and so you can kind of look up the companies and see, like, is this person working specifically for this company, or is this person working for a third party firm that seeks out companies to hire talent for? And this is what a third party recruiter, they usually refer to themselves as like a talent broker, a talent specialist. They'll work with a lot of referrals. They're usually the ones they're kind of blindly hitting you in your message box, looking to see. And what these guys, I mean, we all use LinkedIn Recruiter, but these guys live in LinkedIn Recruiter heavily. And so whatever is on your LinkedIn profile, they're going to be searching for. So if you have logistics in your LinkedIn profile and he's looking for logistics folks, he's probably going to reach out to you in your message box. Hey, I saw you have logistics. Are you interested in this position? All right, now we've actually found a recruiter that we're going to work with. So what does the recruiter, what does a recruiter do? Well, if we're looking at a corporate recruiter like me, this is kind of, what their priorities are broken into. And so we do sourcing. We work with the hiring manager. We have meetings with the hiring manager to determine what are their specific needs and wants for these positions. We also consult them based on the talent that comes in and who we screen and interview on who are the top talents, who we feel they should be interviewing. And this is why it's so critical when dealing with us, for example, for SkillBridge and Fellowship. This is why our position exists, is because we will go to that hiring manager and go, hey, I got Steve Olson. He's got 15 years in the military, he's doing this, and this. They might not understand everything that's on that resume because there might be some military jargon. This is where we have the opportunity to have an actual conversation with that hiring manager and go, listen, this is what this means. This is what an NCO does. This is what a CGO does. This was their scope of responsibility so that they can understand it and go, oh, that's why you put them on the slate. Got it. Okay, tracking. And this is where we advocate heavily for you. We also engage with the other talent acquisition leaders across the business, candidates. We are working with compensation, background investigations, and we do the interviews and the screening. That doesn't even count like our, career fairs, traveling, expos, for example, I'm doing this virtual session with you guys. This is part of what I do. I do a lot of virtual engagement. So, hey, Steve, I'm researching positions. I noticed you're a recruiter. I'm going to reach out to you on LinkedIn. What should I say? What should I do? What's the best way to do that? Well, you always want to make sure that you're meaningful, clear, know your audience, and what is the intent of your engagement? Are you giving me something actionable to do? Reaching out and just saying, hey, Steve, I'm looking for employment opportunities. Can I forward you my resume? Why? Why do you need to forward me my resume? What am I going to do with that resume? I get 100 people send me resumes a day. What are we doing with this? It doesn't give me any. I don't have enough time in the day to search for your job for you. So a more effective approach for dealing with a corporate recruiter from any company is reach out, hey, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. Do you have a career site that I can go to, or do you have a careers posting um, forum or that I can visit to see all the advertised roles? Yes, I'll kick you that link. Okay, now go on the link, find roles that, remember earlier we talked about, are you legitimately a competitive fit? Are you a competitive fit? If you are, now you can fire back to me and go, hey, Steve, this is Kiri. I found this job number R-100265. This is what the job title is, and this is my relevant experience that I feel I'm a great fit for this role, and here is my resume. Now I have an actionable item to go into my applicant tracking system, look up that specific job, validate your resume against the job description, and if you're a competitive fit, now I can actively engage with that civilian recruiter and try to move the needle forward. That's an actionable request. Does that make sense? So if you're just out there on LinkedIn, just messaging people, hey, what jobs you got? Do you have anything in Alaska? Do you have anything in San Antonio? Do you have any remote jobs? I don't answer those because I don't have the time to answer all those. If you're not going to do the research for yourself when every Fortune 500 company has its own career website, why should I hire you if you're expecting me to search your job for you? Why should I hire you? What sets you apart from everybody else? Being proactive, getting on there, finding the roles, making sure you're a competitive fit, and then reaching out to that recruiter with that role, with that job number, and your relevant experience via a resume, now giving them something actionable to do. And even then, sometimes it might not bear fruit, but it's going to bear fruit a lot more often than just a random message saying, hey, what do you got? Steve?
Steven, I want to make sure, if you're cool with it, if other folks can just hop in here and ask questions, unless you want to wait for the end. But when you're looking at that last conversation, sorry to make you go back, but I think it's really clear to me, talking about, hey, I found this opening. This is a really great opportunity. You apply for it, and then you connect the dot. You have an actionable item. That's great. But you had that one message there that I thought, at least in my mind, I thought it was okay. Were those all bad examples? There was one in the middle that was longer, talking about I did 50 strong, I think highly of Verizon. Was that a bad example as well, or?
What? Which one are we looking at? This one right here?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So the one so Michael, so basically what they're doing is they're sending a message to Michael, my boss. Okay. So Michael, he's like the director that runs the entire program. So number one, that's like emailing the general, hey, you got a job? You know what I mean? But number two, this was a little bit better and a little bit more thought out. But at the end of the day, what was the ask here? What was the intent? Like, what am I looking for? I'm glad we met at 50 strong, and that's cool. And I appreciate that you attended. And it's really awesome that you think highly of our company and you want to work here. But what am I doing with this message? What is my next step as a recruiter? What am I going to do with this? More often than not, Michael's going to forward that person to me. Now, my question to Michael is going to be like, well, what is this guy? What did he apply to? Has he applied to anything? Does he have a profile built in Workday? Like, what are we doing? And then my next step is I either have two choices. I can either email this person and go, did you apply to anything? And go through a whole stream of conversation over the course of a couple of days trying to figure it out. Or I can just move on to the next person that actually messaged me with actionable items. And so when you're dealing with talking to hundreds of people, it's kind of like in the military. You wake up and every day you have your task list, right? Your most important task that you got to get done at the beginning of the day, and then you prioritize your tasks for that day. Well, I'm going to prioritize people at the top of the list that give me actionable items to do over top of folks that just randomly reach out with no actionable ask, because it's going to take me a lot longer to figure out what your ask is versus going to somebody that already knows what their ask is and has let me know what it is,
Excellent. No, thank you, Steve.
That doesn't mean we don't help folks that do random reach outs, but it's just, if I have the extra time and the bandwidth, I will. But if I don't, I'm not going to, because I'm busy helping folks with the actionable items that I was already given. So this is kind of like, most recruiters, you're never going to hear them say that, and they won't tell you that, but that's exactly what happens.
I don't think we've ever had that like message, Stephen, in a program like
really?
that like very, because it's like, how do you
It's
talk to
very
a
blunt.
recruiter? But
Yeah.
you're very straightforward and actionable thing. I think that's a great takeaway. I just wanted to make sure that that was clear for everybody. So that's great, Stephen. Thank you.
A lot of the content that I talk about, and the reason why I'm so blunt is because when I retired last year, after 22 years, I went through the hiring process. I had recruiters ghosting me, and I was that guy that was reaching out and doing those random, hey, what do you got in Jersey? You know what I mean? Because that's where I sit, and I was like, nobody ever answers me. What the shit? Why is nobody ever answering me? Why can't I ever get a hold of anybody? And it wasn't until I started really getting some mentors and attending some other folks like Monty and there's some other guys out there, that I have as mentors. Shane Lobson that recruits for Northrop Grumman was one of my mentors, and they were like, this is why. Give them something actionable, give them something, build that relationship, talk to them for a little while first, and then ask, build a relationship with folks. And then once I started doing that, it was crazy. Like the amount of attention that I started getting, like it was like night and day, when I was, I would rather use a sniper rifle and fire 3 shots and hit the target every time than fire a shotgun blast with 200 beads in it and only like 2 of them hits the target. Are we being effective with our time? And that's what this is really about, right? Because I'm going to tell you, writing resumes and tailoring resumes can be a full-time job, if for those that have been in the hunt before that know what I'm talking about.
And I'm not even going to ask your permission. I'm still in that sniper shotgun metaphor, Steve. A good one.
Are we being effective? Would you rather fire 10 shots and hit the target 5 times, or would you rather fire 500 shots and hit the target once? And target, what I mean target, I mean a telephone screen with a recruiter. Recruiters are actually reaching out and calling you and, trying to find out more about you. It's like fishing. Are you using the right bait? But this is kind of the process. This is the hiring process. We get the requisition from, requests from the hiring leader. We have the one-on-one meetings with them. They let us know what their needs and wants are. We put it together in the job description in a readable and, in a format that, can be comprehended well. We post it, we advertise it, we source it. Once we source, we get the talent, we screen them. As we screen them, we move forward slates of talent to the hiring managers for the hiring manager to interview. The hiring managers will select their candidate, and once a candidate is selected, we will then present the job offer. If the job offer is accepted, we then run into the background investigation process and the onboarding process. Whether you're doing direct hire or skill bridge or fellowship, it doesn't matter. We follow the same process for all of those. This is kind of I couldn't get a better picture of this, but this is kind of what a recruiter sees in various applicant tracking systems. And so like with this person, they're going to log in and, they have an associate software engineer. This might be all the different jobs they're actively recruiting for at the same time. Recruiters don't recruit one job at a time. I have some jobs like Rashawn on my team that, he's on the retail team. He might have 70 recs at a time, and he's recruiting for all 70 of them at the exact same time. So he's doing interviews and screens every day. He might do 12, 15 screens a day across all those different jobs every week, every day of the week. And so, that's why it's so important what I stated in the previous 2 slides about actionable results, being effective, because when these guys are managing these workloads, they don't have a lot of time to go back and forth with you 5, 6, 7 times on email trying to figure out what you're looking for. It's not that they don't want to help you, it's they just don't have the bandwidth to do that. Now, we've gotten through the process, we've applied to a role, recruiter is reaching out to screen us. Now we're going to get into the interview part of the process. And so the interview part of the process, we're going to want to make sure we utilize the STAR. You don't have to use it, but I like it because it keeps you focused and on track. And so situation, task, action, result. And for those of us that are in the Air Force, it's kind of similar to how we do our bullets and our EPRs, OPRs. And so here I already spelled it out, but just to spell it out a little bit more, provide a brief description of the situation. What task did you accomplish to knock out that situation? What was the action included in that task? And what was the ultimate result or value you brought to the organization by doing those things? Usually when you're talking to whether it's a recruiter or a hiring manager and they ask you a job knowledge or behavioral type question, you want to try to keep your answer 30 to 90 seconds so that you can stay clear, concise, and on point. And it also enables them to ask more questions during an interview so they can get to know you better. An interview should feel like a normal conversation. It shouldn't feel like an interrogation. And then once you've made it through the phone screen, and from the phone screen, you go to the hiring manager interview. Like I stated before, our job as a recruiter is to, let you know at each stage of the process where you're at. And with us, a lot of times it's an automated email as you move through the process, and it goes into your spam box a lot of the time. So it might not be that the recruiters are ghosting you, but maybe the emails are going into your spam box and you're not catching them. And so they are actually emailing you, but if you're not checking your spam folder, you might be missing those communications. So that sometimes that's a reason why you might feel like you're being ghosted. Other times they might be legitimately ghosting you, but it might be for various reasons. Were you not a competitive fit? Did you apply to a role that you were really not a strong fit for? And they're actually interviewing and screening the folks that were strong applicants. Or did they already select somebody by the time you applied to the role? Maybe they already had somebody selected, or maybe there's already an offer out. And so usually there's an email that will go out once the position is filled, and it'll let you know, hey, the position has been filled. But once again, if you're not checking your spam box, you might not be seeing that email. You might miss it. But a lot of times with these roles, it's timing. Did you apply at the right time in the process? A lot of this, some companies will advertise how long a role's been advertised. And so if they have that, look and see how long that role's been advertised for. If it's been advertised for like 2 months, chances are if you apply to that role, you're probably going to be deep in the stack, and they may already be moving through the process already for an offer. If it's only been posted for a couple of days, you're catching that at the prime time to apply and be seen by the recruiter. You're probably going to be in the first 25 to 50 applicants, which is where you really want to be. And these are just I think this is the last slide, but this is, for whether you're doing direct hire or contract hire. And in the cyberspace, there's a lot of contract work. This is the difference between the two. And so there's pros and cons to either. My wife works in pharma. They are very contract heavy industry too. There are a lot of folks that actually prefer the contract work because they just take their vacation time in between their contracts. And so they might work for 6 months, take a month off, work for 6 months, take a month off. And so they line up their contracts that way. And they might like that autonomy and flexibility a little bit more. Other folks like me, I like a little bit more structure. I don't like to leaving that up to fate. And so I'm more of the direct hire approach. I want to know that I'm a full-time employee permanently. I don't have to worry about contract periods of time. Direct hires usually get benefits from the company, whether it's retirement, 401k, medical, dental, insurance, things like that, stock rewards. Contract hires, usually you have to buy your own insurances, your own healthcare, your own. You do your own 401k. You might get paid a little bit more in the contract because you are having to go out and shop these things on your own. But those are the differences between the two of those things. And that's it. So if anybody's got any questions, I can stay on longer too if folks want, have more questions and they want to ask them.
Feel free to come off mute, y'all, or just pop on in.
My apologies if folks are chatting in the chat and I'm not seeing it.
Now, I moderated it.
Hi, this is Hamed Adeni. How do you turn down an offer when it's just not the right fit? In terms of the offer, not the job. Like you've gone through the whole process and you've gotten an offer. How's a really good way to turn down an offer when it's just not the right fit? And what the right offer would be, for what you was looking for. It just didn't come close to what they advertised, something like that, in that sense.
Well, we really got to look at the job description. The job description kind of give you an idea of where you realistically should fall, in a pay range. So let's just say, for example, a job has a pay range posted of 100K to 160K. And the ask is for 6+ years of relevant experience. And then there's 15 things in the preferred qual section. And then there's also the things in the what you'll be doing section. If you just meet, the 6 years at a minimum and you have like half the preferred quals, you're not going to get 160. You'd be lucky if you get somewhere in the middle of that. So also you got to, it really depends. I'm only hearing your side of it. If I was to look at the job description and look at your resume and then compare you to the people that already work at that company that are already doing that job and where they fall on the salary pay band, maybe the offer they're giving you is actually fair. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I'd have to look at that info. But if it's not, if you don't feel it's fair for you, you just be respectful, just write a letter and say, I respectfully decline. I feel like I should be getting, somewhere in this range, and this is why, and these are all the skills that I have that validate that and why I should. Oftentimes, you can rebuttal an offer. If they give you an offer, you don't have to just flat turn it down. You can write a letter and send it back and say, hey, I really love this company. I love what it's about. I feel like my personal values really align with this company. I feel like this is a great position and opportunity. However, I feel like, I would really like to see a little bit more, and these are the reasons why I feel like my offer should be a little bit higher, and fire it back to them.
Like a counter offer.
Sometimes like a counter offer, and sometimes they'll take that back and maybe they'll up it a couple of grand or they'll up it $5,000, depending on, if you have enough justification. If they come back and it's still not where it needs to be, then you got to do what you got to do. If you're in a position where you have multiple offers from multiple different companies, then obviously you're going to go with the one that fits the best. If it's the only company giving you an offer right now, I don't know. Is that a wise decision to turn it down? That's something you're going to figure out for yourself.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot of folks that they're afraid to counter. Don't be afraid to counter. Just don't be ridiculous with your counter. Don't tell them, "Oh, I want 30 grand more." And this is why. Trust me, if they felt that you had enough on your resume to warrant 30 grand more, they would have just gave you a higher offer. But if if you're just like, hey, I'd like, is there any more room left? I'd like to see at least 2 to 5 grand more. Or maybe, instead of a 10% bonus, can I get like an 11% bonus or maybe a couple extra days of vacation? It depends on the company. Most of your larger Fortune 50 organizations have very set and established vacation times, and because it's such a large organization that there might not be as much wiggle room. A smaller company might have a lot more flexibility on certain things. So this goes back to, you really need to know your audience when you're in that offer process. And that's where mentors really come in to play. If you don't really know what to do and you have an offer, reach out and find a mentor and go, hey, this is the situation. This is what I'm going through. What do you recommend? What would you do before you make a very bad decision and fire back with a ridiculous counter offer? Hi, Amber.
Quick question. In California, there's a new law that says that if the company's past a certain size in any job posting, they have to list the pay range.
Yep.
I get so many emails from recruiters, especially offshore. You're right. The Fortune 500, if it came through LinkedIn, they'll usually list the range for California and Colorado. But most of these do not even list the range. And of course, some of them are way below what I would consider working for. So you would think it would be self-defeating on their side too. But what do you do? I mean, aside from what I've been doing is firing back an email saying, what's the pay range?
Yes. So I like to hash this out up front when I do my phone screen so that we get that out of the way before we talk about anything else. and usually once we agree on that, something that's acceptable, the rest of the process is cake, but New York City is also very new. I think it just started over the summer. They also now post pay range, by the way. But one way, like when I ask a question, hey, obviously the skill bridge position's unpaid, but when you go full time, what kind of a pay range are you looking for? And they'll, a good counter to that would be, well, what's the pay range? And then I'll tell them this is what the pay range is. And then I'll let them know realistically based on their years of experience, like this is probably realistically where you should be. If you want to validate that and not just take my word for it, you can go on Glassdoor. Glassdoor is what I used, and it was super accurate for where I was in Jersey as a recruiter or a senior recruiter. It was almost within like a couple $1,000s accurate of what I got. And I got a great offer, and so I use Glassdoor. I recommend Glassdoor. The only thing that Glassdoor may fail on sometimes, and I guess it's not a fail, but like if you're in a very niche career field that's not normal, that's going to be really tough. And that is where utilizing your LinkedIn network, going in the search bar and looking up that job title and that company name and finding somebody that does that job in that company and schedule a coffee chat information session with them. Hey, can I get 15, 20 minutes of your time? I applied to this role. I noticed this is what you do. I'd like to learn more about what you do day to day. And then during that conversation, you can pick their brain about something like that. And then that'll give you the information you need, at least to make as close to an educated decision as you can.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. This game is never going to end. It's like when you go to buy a car, man. You already know when you go in a car dealership, you're going to meet the salesperson. They're going to shake your hand. They ain't going to give you the final number right up front. They're going to go back to the manager 5 times. And if the hiring process ain't that bad, but it's a game. You got to learn the game. You got to know how to play the game.
Awesome. I actually had a participant email me in chat a question for you, Stephen. So kind of going back to that networking stage, would you suggest applying for one of those older roles so that you're connecting with that recruiter and seeing like the good fit for your skills, or would you not recommend doing that?
I would say it depends on the company. I'll be honest with you. I can only really speak for my company. I don't recruit for other companies. But for us specifically, that's why my team exists for the military, is that if you're applying to roles and you're not catching any traction, come to one of our information sessions. You can actually go back and forth with us just like we are here. And you could say, hey, I applied to R-100, whatever, not really getting a whole lot of traction. And then what our team will do is we can go in and take a look. And it might be very well like maybe you're just not applying to the right level. Maybe like I had, for example, I had a separating captain who was looking for a project manager role for cyber, but like on the network operations side, and they were applying to principal engineer roles and they weren't getting any attention. And so when I went in there and looked, I go, this is where knowing your audience, because at different companies, the job titles might be vastly different in scope. And so I said, hey, at this company, I don't think you're really applying to the right level. You should really be applying to a senior engineer role instead of a principal engineer role, which is one step down. And I think you have the relevant experience and you're competitive at that level. Mm-hmm. Let's switch it up and start targeting the appropriate level that you should be in, or vice versa. If you're applying and maybe they're thinking you're way overqualified and we take a look and we go, hey, you're applying for senior roles. Maybe you should be applying for principal engineer roles. Like, I think maybe they feel like you're so overqualified that they're afraid if they hire you, you're going to dip out in a couple of months and go work somewhere else because you get a better offer. Companies think about this kind of stuff. They want you to come on board and stay long-term because they don't want to have to keep retraining people every 2 months because people are coming on board and jumping ship. So are you applying at the appropriate level for your skill set? Also, if you're super overqualified and you're okay with maybe taking something because you just, I know some folks, man, they're just like, listen, I have a master's, I have a PhD or an MED or, an educational doctorate, but I really don't want to be a professor anymore. I really want to get back to hands-on. Don't put your PhD on your resume, be mindful of what you're putting on your resume, because when you're applying for those roles, you got to understand that civilian recruiter is going to look at it and go, oh my God, this guy's got a freaking doctorate. This young lady's got all these certifications, got 25 years experience, but this role only asks for 3 years experience. more than likely they're going to go, man, not only are they overqualified, but more than likely if I select them, they're probably going to want the absolute top of that pay range. Maybe I can't even afford them. Maybe you're perfectly fine with that, but they're not going to see it that way. They're not going to see it that way. So just be mindful of who your audience is. If you don't know what the appropriate title is that you should be applying to, once again, get back on LinkedIn, find a mentor, somebody with that company that can maybe look at your resume and guide you in the right direction.
Sure. Do some research. Got to do a little legwork.
Got to do the legwork.
And it looks like Alex has a question next.
Oh, hi. I have a question. Hi, guys.
Go ahead, Alex.
Hi.
I have a question. So in 2015, I stopped working in IT because I was awarded 100%, but the temporary one, not the permanent total one.
Correct.
And
Yep.
During that time, I've just been going to my therapies and all the good stuff that's out there for healing and stuff like that. Because
We don't need to get into your personal business.
Oh no, yeah. But my question is, I'm right now. I'm awaiting to get the permanent total right now as we speak. And during that time, I've been brushing up my resume. Been taking a lot of courses such as the cybersecurity program with this program that we're in. And so my question is, with all those years that are empty, I still have tech skills from back in the day when I started working in 2005 to 2015. Yeah, my question is, since I don't have experience within the last 10 years, what do you recommend for me to do in order to get a decent pay wage? Yeah, so I'm not stuck with like a beginner pay wage, like pay rate.
Well, unfortunately, if you're switching gears and you don't have the relevant experience, I don't think there's any way to not get around the entry level pay range. That's one of the things I talk to a lot of transitioning service members about, not so much the veterans, but I'll have somebody that'll do like aircraft maintenance for 20 years, and then 6 months before they get out, they switch to cyber. There's nothing wrong with that. You just have to make sure, once again, like I was talking to Amber, you need to research your industry. You need to get mentors. You need to find out like you said, like a reasonable pay range. Well, what I think is reasonable and what you think is reasonable might be two different things. So what does that look like for that industry, right? For that position. I find that having mentors in that exact line of work that you're targeting is a great way to find out the answer to your question. What is an acceptable pay range? What skills do I need? And what are some things that I can do to build that out so I can be competitive, right? So like, what are the certs that I need? Are you doing nonprofit work? Are you doing, I got folks that I interact with, they do nonprofit work for vets to industry. They've been doing it for like 2 years. Now they can go apply to roles as recruiters and career counselors and all kinds of stuff because they've been doing it volunteering for vets to industry for the last 2 years. So I was a big VFW guy for the last 20 years. I was a national aide de camp for the national commander, things like that. So, maybe I couldn't get leadership experience in certain roles, but on my nonprofit side of my experience, I have tons of leadership experience that is relevant on a job, on a resume. So you can find out, like, are there nonprofits out there that can utilize your skill set? I don't know what your specific skill set is, but this is just like an example.
Okay, that makes sense. Like, just basically getting more specific to what I want to do, and also research on those roles and try to find people and network with that kind of field that I want to get back. And then,
so let's say maybe you were back in the old telecom days where it was like Bell Atlantic or whatever, and it used to be like dial-up phone and stuff like that, and then you got out of the industry and now you're trying to jump back in, and now it's 5G. I actually deal with that a lot. Guys from Bell Atlantic, like, and MCI and stuff like that. Maybe you have the IT experience and you understand like the company and the layout and everything, but you're just not up on the modern tech. That's
Right.
easy because you actually have relevant experience. You just got to get restarted, or you just got, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah, yeah.
that's a little different versus like maybe straight up switching career field.
Yeah, because I've been trying to test the waters out, sending my resume out, and like no hits or anything like that. So, and a lot of the ones that do come back is it just says no, I don't have experience, like recent experience. So that's the only
Yeah.
thing that's getting me right now. But yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate your answer. I'm gonna definitely do more research and try to get mentored and try to get into the specific fields. There's more fields out there now in the tech industry, especially for us techies. That that there's a lot more specialized industries too for us. So that's pretty cool. So I'm gonna look into that. But thank you so much, man.
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn is like the greatest thing. I love freaking LinkedIn, man. Like you can find so many people. I use LinkedIn Learning like crazy. I probably got like 40 certs loaded on LinkedIn just
Oh
for, I
wow.
mean, I use the heck out of it, because it keeps me up to date with what's going on. And when I was coming out of military recruiting, corporate recruiting is a completely different animal. And I was able to brush up very quickly and figure things out.
Do you take those LinkedIn Learning certifications seriously?
I wouldn't, go blast them all over your resume, but what it does is by doing those, you can add them to your LinkedIn profile, but it's just the matter of you yourself brushing up on what's new so that when you're engaging and having telephone phone screens and you're talking to a hiring manager, you're up to date with how you're speaking with the common lingo, the tech, you're able to talk the talk with them and keep up with them on whatever the subjects are that they're talking to you about that are relevant to that job. That's where I find the most value in those LinkedIn learning certifications is I know the lingo that I need to use versus using the old military lingo I'm used to. So for example, if 15 years ago you were an NCI or Bell Atlantic and there were specific, abbreviations and, and words that you used and lingo that you used, 15 years ago, that might have been the common lingo, but now the lingo might be totally different. Those LinkedIn learning courses will let you know what those are. And then you can draw the correlation between what you knew in the past and what you now know and go, okay, it's now called this. It was called this 15 years ago, but now I know that they're really the same thing. It's just now the process has changed. And it keeps you, it gets you, now you can intelligently speak to that hiring manager when you're being questioned.
Wow, thank you so much, man. That really makes sense.
Hopefully that was clear.
Yeah, that was clear. That was definitely clear. I have a lot of things to think about. Yeah, you're right. So, but thank you so much, man.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Amber, do
Stephen,
you
I
want to
think,
do David's? Go ahead.
yeah, I'm actually going to let Lee go first. Lee had his hand raised before me. Lee, if you want to ask your question.
What's up,
Yeah, no,
Lee?
I just wanna thank Steve Weston. I linked him with him on LinkedIn, and I always message him whenever time I find a job that I like, and he's real good at getting back to you. And if the job is not under his control, he actually puts you with the recruiter that has that job. And another good thing, he gives you good positive feedback. I know there was a particular network job applied for, and he told me that there was like another candidate that was more qualified. So one good thing about Steve, he's not going to ghost you, and he's going to give you positive feedback. So I just wanted to thank you, Steve.
Oh, Lee, I appreciate that, and he does go back and forth with me a few times. But I'm still, I'd be lying if I said I was able to do that with everybody, though. Like I only have so much bandwidth, and I don't do it on purpose. But if I don't get back to you within a couple of days, it's not because I don't want to. It's just I have a lot of people reach out, So I try my best to at least give you the customer service you should get, But I appreciate that. Thank you.
So thank
And
you.
then David had a question.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I'll read it out to you. So, do you have any thoughts on the new trend of rejection thank you emails? Is it good to
I ain't
do
gonna
for
lie.
a desired company or position, to keep you in mind for a future opening, or have you heard this working?
So are we talking about rejection thank you emails from the applicant, or are we talking about rejection emails from the company?
I'm gonna guess the applicant. David, is that right? Yes, from
Yes.
the applicant.
Okay. I just want to make sure I'm clarifying because we actually use similar type emails. Like, for example, if we have 500 people on a requisition and we hire somebody, everybody that didn't get hired is going to get an email that says, hey, we filled the position, you were not considered, whatever. As far as getting it the other way around, I mean, some companies might find that acceptable. For me, I never want to burn a bridge, especially if I'm in an industry that's very small. Like, for example, mentioned earlier, my wife is in pharma compliance, right? She's an associate director in a big pharma company. Her company that industry line of work is very small. And so she's working with people now that she worked with 10 years ago she's been to like 4 different companies in between that, and so what you always do want to make sure is know your audience, because if you're in that small of a skill set that it's, that could happen, you don't want to be unprofessional with the recruiters, because, all right, cool, maybe you got a better offer and you're going somewhere else and you decide to send one of those not so awesome emails. And then 6 months from now, that company you chose to go to instead lays you off. And now you want to go try to apply back at the company you sent one of them crappy emails to. Don't be surprised if they ghost you. Oh, I remember this guy, I had this guy an offer, and he, for this girl an offer, and, they were very unprofessional. Like, why would they put you through the hiring process again? Why?
Yeah.
If you're that unprofessional.
Have you ever had anybody follow up to that rejection letter saying, thanks, and, thanks, I'm still interested, or anything like that? Or is
I'll be honest with you, I don't typically deal with those because we don't
Okay.
get them. I don't get them in what I do, because I do more of the SkillBridge fellowship hiring. I do assist with direct hire, but not as much. A lot of our conversations are actually like this. Yeah, they're either on like a Zoom call, or we're having a conversation on a telephone. And it's okay. You don't have to accept an offer. Let's not get it twisted. But I feel like you could say, hey, you know what? I think that's a really great offer. However, I received a more competitive offer from another company, and I feel like that's what's best for me and my family. I do appreciate everything you did, but I'm going to have to pass on this offer. That's fine. That's perfectly professional. I won't take that personally. You know what? You're going to do what's best for you and your family. And if another company beat us out, then that's what it is, but at least you handled it in a professional manner. And I'd be more than happy to hire you on a future date for another role if you're a competitive fit. Absolutely. What I don't want you to do is just send me like, I don't want the offer, thanks, best, Jake. Don't do that. That's very disrespectful.
Sure. David, I hope I did justice to your question.
Okay.
Well, I don't want to end prematurely, but I just want to take at least a quick opportunity to say thank you so much, Stephen, for making the time. I realize that you're a busy man, but we all appreciate that. Most of the folks in this program, military, law enforcement, not all, but we're all looking for something, whether upskilling in our current job for that next promotion, or trying to actually edge into the cyber field, or something similar. So your expertise is very much appreciated. Your candidness, your direction, your power, your presentation was perfect. So I just want to say thank you on behalf of CWCT. You're a good friend of the program. Any last questions before I close this out here? This recording will be available, and I'm going to send out a follow-up email for the good of the group.
Awesome. No worries. I appreciate everybody that's in here. Appreciate you guys' service. If we have some military spouses in here, I appreciate too. And if you're not either, but you're a military supporter, I even appreciate you more, because I tell you what, man, these folks that are coming out of the service and these military spouses, they really need it. They need your support.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it I was gonna ask Steve if he also does like checks resumes, and also like kind of just sees whether we're at the level of being employed, or we still need more work, sort of type of analysis.
I don't think I'm not going to volunteer Stephen for that necessarily, but I know Amber and I will do that. We're happy to take a look at your resume and let you know the direction you're going in. So we have staff here that we absolutely are happy to do that. Now the guy
Awesome.
the guide that I posted that Steven put down there is going to be your best bet to knock it out of the park. But we can let you know at least where you're at. We've seen it all in the 3 years we've done this program. So you're not, just for anybody out there, you're not going to surprise us.
Okay, that's good to
Absolutely.
know, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
As much as I'd like to review everybody's resume, I'll go from here to a hiring our heroes with 1,200 people in it to a 50 strong with 700 people in it. I can't handle looking at everybody's resume. That's why Steve and Amber have the resources for you that they have, because they're on the ground with you. They can support.
Great
Right on.
question,
Thank you so
everybody.
much.
Enjoy your Wednesday night. Be safe. We've got more information coming out of CWCT about future events moving forward. As always, feel free to reach out to Amber and myself with any questions related to career readiness, programming, getting that job, looking at your resume, or anything else about our program, including certificate vouchers. Y'all have a great evening. Hit us up if you need us. And happy Veterans Day.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Amber.
Thank
so
you.
much, Stephen. Really. I'll follow up with you after this, but thank you so much.